You're listening to the myPET podcast, the show for pet lovers of Australia and around the world.
Hi, you're listening to the myPET podcast. I'm Aria, and as always, I'm joined by our resident vet and ex-guinea pig groomer, shower and pamperer,
Extraordinaire.
Dr. Glenn.
Go the Dalmatian guinea pigs.
You had Dalmatian guinea pigs.
And selfs. Yeah.
What's a self?
Self is the colour, base colour that of all the, like, there's black self and a Gucci self and red self. So if you want a black Dalmatian, you've got to breed a self to a Dalmatian to get half selfs and half Dalmatian, because if you breed Dalmatian, you get a quarter genetic defects that aren't compatible with life. They don't develop normally.
Okay.
So that's not ethically very good.
No.
Yes.
It came as a shock to me when I learned that about you. But also not, because
they're really cool animals.
They
I'd
are.
still have them
awesome.
if I didn't have 3 dogs that just would spend their life trying to kill guinea pigs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think they're amazing, but I've never had one.
Yeah, they're really cool. Got big personalities for little animals.
Yeah.
And they're really cool.
Yeah. So before we get started, this is just general advice. So for advice specific to you and your guinea pigs, have a chat to your vet. But we are going to be talking today about something that guinea pigs are quite prone to, which is heat stress.
Yeah.
I don't really know a lot about guinea pigs, to be entirely honest. But you were telling me that they don't deal with the heat well at all, at all.
No, they're just not designed for it. I mean, they're originally from high in the Andes mountains, running around little clumps of grass, trying to escape from hawks and stuff like that.
Like above the tree line, you were saying?
Oh, treeless areas, yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
2,000 to 4,000 metres of altitude, which generally makes it a bit cooler.
Yeah.
And if there's snow above that, it's going to be fairly cool. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Any temperatures realistically over, like, low to mid-20s is not compatible with what guinea pigs would like to be.
Yeah.
And definitely over 30 degrees is disastrous. And if there's any humidity, it's disastrous as well.
Yeah.
They're just, the only way they cool down is by panting, essentially. So, I mean, if they're lying on cool stuff, or if their environment is cool around them, well, they can radiate heat that way, and they're grotty little buggers, and they just sort of lie on their environment most of the time anyway. With guinea pigs, you've really got to think about, okay, what's the temperature on the temperature gauge? Like, if the weather says it's going to be 28 degrees, but what is the actual temperature
What it feels
of
like?
the environment where your guinea pig is?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, inside guinea pigs in the air conditioning, okay, well, you know what temperature is there. I mean, there's lots of guinea pigs in Australia live in outdoor cages and enclosures. So, if that enclosure is, the lawn cage in the sun, what temperature is it at ground level, even when it's 20 degrees, is there sun beating down on the roof of the guinea pig cage? If it's in the sun, is it insulated?
Yeah.
There's lots of things to think about, but yes, they don't cope with heat at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like little snowy mountain guys. That's so adorable.
Yeah. And if you're breeding guinea pigs, you probably know it anyway, but pregnant females are particularly sensitive to, can't cool themselves down at all. They just die and abort and get ketosis and all sorts of horrible stuff
Poor little
from
ladies.
overheating, because they've got a large metabolic demand, and if they go off their food while they're just a bit hot, then their livers collapse and all sorts of stuff. So really sensitive to breeding in hot weather is not a good idea.
Yeah.
Probably lots of guinea pigs get bred that aren't supposed to get bred, because they've got very effective life cycles.
Yes, very effective lifestyle. I like that way of putting it.
Yeah, like they get pregnant when they're 2 months old, and boys are potentially able to get girls pregnant when they're like 4 weeks old.
Wow.
So yes, just be very careful with pregnant females.
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of people end up with pregnant females that don't realise it. I certainly speak to a lot of clients who end up in that situation.
Yeah.
Most of them take it in their stride and become good little guinea pig foster parents.
Yeah.
So what are the risk factors for guinea pigs? Obviously, all guinea pigs are quite high risk.
Yep.
So what were the temperatures that you said were the problem?
I mean, realistically, anything over the early to mid-20s, which is most of the time in Australia, realistically.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
I mean, they can tolerate sometimes temperatures higher than that, and that's where they live, but it's far from ideal.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you definitely, anytime that realistically the temperature's over like 25 degrees is potentially dangerous, which is most of summer in most of Australia, and half the time in winter as well.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
What are the symptoms of heat stress in guinea pigs?
Yep. So, I mean, initially, panting, open mouth breathing, drooling, rapid respiratory rate as part of the panting side of things goes. If they start to get hypothermia and cook, they will start to get little muscle tremors and can have seizures. If it's sort of over a longer period, they can get dehydrated and not drink as enough as they should and not eat as much as they should and get lethargic and moribund and just sort of floppy and flaccid. But basically unwell, increased respiratory rate, drooling and right through to having seizures and dying, or being just depressed and lethargic and not moving. Yeah. Sick.
Yeah. And like, what are the warning signs that you need to get them to a vet now?
I mean, ideally, if you think they've had an overheating episode, if showing any of those symptoms, realistically, they could go backwards. And I mean, they're little animals. They don't cope with heat that well, but then, I mean, if you're cooling them down actively through, towels and water and all those sort of things, I mean, it's easy to overshoot and go to hypothermia, particularly if they've already overheated and then their metabolism's in trouble.
Yeah.
It is a big problem, yeah.
Yeah. So if someone's concerned that their guinea pig's got heat stroke or getting too hot, what's the treatment? What should they do about it?
I mean, short term, cooling them effectively definitely makes sense, and that's wetting the guinea pig. I mean, you could put them under a cool tap, not anywhere near the head, but running water can effectively cool them down quite quickly. Cool water, not necessarily ice packs and that sort of thing, because you can burn skin, and you don't want them don't want it super cool, because then all the blood vessels constrict and they don't actually cool down that much. But basically, moving air, so in the air conditioning under a fan, and actively cooling them with cool water makes sense. I mean, if you've got a thermometer, you can monitor their body temperature via the rectal method, and if their temperature gets down to 39 degrees, you'd stop actively cooling them, because you don't want to overshoot the mark sort of thing.
What is their ideal body temperature?
I mean, 38 to 38.5 is up to normal. If they're more than 39.5, they're hot at the moment. But I mean, sometimes it's you've been out for the day or at work or whatever, and you find them in a floppy, sick state. They might not be hot now, but they could have been hot, which is it's a vet visit. Yeah. I mean, take them to your vet, and they can, hydration is very important, so intravenous or intra guinea pig fluids can help. Oral electrolyte solutions with some energy in there, because metabolically they're potentially compromised. And guinea pigs don't do well with not eating. Particularly pregnant females, disastrous, but if they don't eat for like a couple of hours, they're running out of reserve, running out of energy. So if they feel unwell enough not to eat, you've got to basically get some energy into them somehow.
So I guess prevention's always better than cure.
Correct.
And very important for these little guys, because it can be pretty catastrophic for them. And also just sounds like it'd be very uncomfortable.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's pretty miserable for the poor little buggers, because they're just not designed for it.
Absolutely. So what kind of things, like, what measures can people take to prevent them from getting heat stroke and keep them more comfortable?
So, I mean, housing, just their local environment, which you've got, the most control over. So, if you've got outdoor guinea pigs, I mean, consider bringing them inside into the aircon if the environmental conditions don't suit. And that can be a temporary measure, or it can be, a semi-permanent or a permanent measure sort of thing. We used to have the guinea pig towers. So we had like 4 levels of guinea pigs where they had good ventilation, so the mesh backs and sides and fronts, and then solid floors and their bedding, but you could have fans, blowing sort of through ventilation sort of thing. So, I mean, keeping their bedding
clean. How many guinea pigs did you have?
About 40 something at the max.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
We had 3 towers of 4, so we had 12 living areas.
Wow, guinea pig towers. That sounds epic. Sorry, I interrupted
with little fans blowing. that
Wow.
way on them. Yeah, because it was Townsville. It was underneath the Queenslander, so it was like nice. They were never in the sun as such, but they had good flow through ventilation. But it still used to get hot. So you could, yes, if you've got a guinea pig enclosure, obviously moving it to underneath a tree and shade is very important. I mean, they should always have shade in the enclosure itself. But realistically, I mean, if depending on what the structure is, if you've got a 40 centimetre high roof there, even if you've got ceiling insulation underneath the roof structure, how hot is it there?
Yeah.
Because if the enclosure is only this big, or if you've got hot grass in the sun here and hot grass in the sun here and sun coming down here, like how actually warm is it in there potentially? That's a risk. So the more shade the better. You can do things like actively cooling, like offering little ice bricks, ice bottles, have multiple ice bricks and water bottles, full of water, frozen. Then you can just put them in there and they can get as close to them as they wish to. Like you can have little bricks where they'll might choose to lie on it.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between a sick animal sticking them on a brick to try and cool them down, like a ice brick to try and cool them down, versus giving a normal healthy animal the opportunity to get close to something cool or cold if they choose to. So because if they get cold feet or get cold skin, well, they can move away from it, sort of thing. But certainly large ice masses that are still going to be ice, or at least cool water later in the afternoon, can definitely be beneficial. If you can't bring them inside, or if the aircon's, if it's going to be hotter inside than it is outside, well, okay, outside's a better option. But actively having them in fans outside may or may not work, but big ice bricks and ice things can help.
So they include, like, you'd never want them to be overcrowded, like too many guinea pigs within a space anyway. But I imagine that wouldn't help things because they'd all be radiating heat onto each other.
That's right, doesn't help. And again, I mean, classically you'll have a bigger lawn cage where they can graze, but that may not all be shaded. So the shade area, like if you've got 5 guinea pigs and it's a relatively small shade area, well, having them all in there, their body heat's going to warm things up as well. So that's could be a problem.
And do you think like electrolytes in water or anything like that is good?
Certainly good to offer. It's probably not great to have necessarily as their sole water source in case it puts them off their water, and there's different electrolyte solutions you can get, like the lactades. I'm certainly a big fan of. Most guinea pig people probably use little nozzle waterers. That's the main way, so you tend not to have a water bowl because they're little grubs. So you could have like 2 bottles set up, one with water and one with your electrolyte solution. I mean, you can put cool water in there, but it's probably going to heat up reasonably quickly. Again, don't have those in the direct sun, have them in the shade so they stay as cool as possible for as long as possible. But yes, definitely electrolytes can help with particularly, again, those pregnant females, and the electrolytes with glucose in them as an energy source, because the first thing that guinea pigs do is reduce their food intake if they're hot, and those pregnant females need lots of energy.
So is there any dietary modifications that can help with their heat?
Yep. In general, I mean, I'm not a big fan of feeding, mostly fruit and veggies and stuff. I don't recommend routing them in. They're designed as a species to eat grass. If you've got green grass, that is by far the best diet for them.
I heard a rumour that you used to go and cut fresh grass for your guinea
used to
pig.
go in a couple of big bags of grass every day. And they eat hay and that sort of thing as well. And look, the pregnant females have got a higher energy requirement, so we used to use a grain pellet, like a concentrate for them. In general, not feeding grain is probably a good idea when it's hot, because it's higher metabolic load, like it actually makes them heat up more potentially. So whether you feed the higher energy foods at night when it's cooler for your pregnant animals, and then just sort of ad-lib green grass during the day, or hay if you're feeding hay. But diet can help, can change to some extent. I mean, as I said, I don't routinely recommend feeding fruit and veggies to them, because it's not really what they're designed to eat. But a cold carrot, if they like carrots, or a cold bit of watermelon or something like that as a cool treat while it's hot, I mean, that potentially makes sense. And I've got no trouble with that. Any dietary change and diarrhea and all that sort of thing is a potential. But if they're used to eating that, okay, give them cold veggies, makes sense if you're already used to feeding
Yeah.
veggies.
And of course, if they have diarrhea when they're hot, then it just makes them...
None of that's going to help.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, backing off the grain if they're on any grain, and giving them cool food to eat probably makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Are there any other tips or tricks that from your experience to help?
That's the main thing. I mean, bedding and hygiene is really important. So you want airflow through everything. You don't want them just to be lying on wet bedding. I mean, potentially, if you've got, depends on your circumstance. Like if you've got a large run and you've got an area that you can wet within that area, I mean, that might be cooler there. Just because of evaporation, but I mean, probably the ice bricks probably make more sense.
Yeah.
I mean, look, ideally they'd be inside in the air conditioning when it's hot.
Yeah.
Realistically, that would be the best thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same.
Yeah.
That's where I would prefer to
Absolutely.
be too.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm from the Andes way up high.
Potentially.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. So you don't have any guinea pigs anymore?
Not anymore. No.
How long has it been?
Probably 15, 16 years probably.
So you've switched to doggy Dalmatians now instead?
Yeah, we had them then, but they were easy to control.
Yeah.
And I mean, realistically, where we live now, I mean, there's a lot of the years not suitable for them to be outside.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's just too tricky.
They're really cool little animals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A friend of mine where I grew up, which was quite cold, had a lot of guinea pigs,
Yeah.
and they were just the coolest.
Yeah.
They're the
I
best.
love an area of like free range where they just do their
Beautiful.
guinea pig things in amongst big clumping grasses and stuff.
I know.
But then you have to fortify it for Dalmatians, unfortunately, and
Yeah.
foxes and all those sort of things.
That's it, yeah. Oh well, thanks so much for sharing. It's very cool.
All good.
And thanks for watching, guys. I hope you and your guinea pigs stay cool.
Stay cool. Thanks, guys.
Bye.